I can defend him." These 4 words from an 8-year-old girl in a crowded courtroom would not only save a young millionaire from losing everything, but would expose the most shocking betrayal in legal history and prove that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. What you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a testament to the power of innocence, the corruption of greed, and how one child's courage changed 2 lives forever. By the end of this video, you'll understand why age has nothing to do with wisdom, and why the most powerful person in that courtroom wasn't the judge, the lawyers, or even a millionaire facing financial ruin. It was an 8-year-old girl named Emma. But here's the part that will absolutely shock you. Emma wasn't just any little girl. She was a homeless daughter of the courthouse janitor. And what she knew about this case would bring down one of the most prestigious law firms in New York City. Stay with me, because this story will restore your faith in human nature and prove that heroes come in the smallest packages. Let me take you back to Manhattan, October 2019. 23-year-old David Chun had just become the youngest tech millionaire in Silicon Valley history. His app ConnectMind had sold for $50 million, and he was living the American dream. Penthouse apartment, luxury cars, the whole 9 yards. But success brings enemies, and David's biggest enemy was someone he trusted most. His own business partner, Marcus Reynolds, had been plotting for months. Using forged documents and fake contracts, Marcus filed a lawsuit claiming that David had stolen the app idea from him. The case was airtight. The evidence was fabricated perfectly, and Marcus had hired the best lawyers money could buy. David's lawyer was James Mitchell, a man he'd paid $250,000 to defend him. But 3 days before the trial, James did something unthinkable. He took a $2 million bribe from Marcus and abandoned David completely. Picture this. The night before the biggest trial of his life, David sits alone in his apartment, staring at a text message from his lawyer. "I can no longer represent you. Find new counsel immediately." With less than 12 hours before trial, no lawyer in the city would take his case. David Chun, the young millionaire, was about to walk into court completely defenseless against one of the most powerful legal teams in America. But fate works in mysterious ways. That same night, in the basement of the courthouse, 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez was doing her homework by flashlight. Her father, Miguel, worked nights as a janitor to support them after Emma's mother had passed away from cancer. They had been homeless for 6 months, sleeping in the courthouse basement where Miguel had a key. Emma was brilliant beyond her years. While her father cleaned, she would read legal books, court transcripts, anything she could find. She had taught herself to read at age 4 and had a photographic memory that astounded everyone who met her. But that night, as Emma was reading a discarded legal brief, she overheard something that would change everything. 2 men were talking in the hallway above. One voice she recognized as Marcus Reynolds. She had seen him in court documents scattered around the building. The other was unfamiliar, but what they said made her blood run cold. "The judge is bought," Marcus was saying. $2 million to Mitchell to abandon his client. Another $1 million to Judge Harrison to rule in our favor. David Chun will lose everything tomorrow, and there's nothing he can do about it. Emma's heart pounded. She had been following David's case through the documents her father collected, and she knew David was innocent. She had seen the original app patents, the real contracts, the timeline that proved David had created ConnectMind entirely on his own. But she was just a child. Who would believe her? The next morning, October 15th, 2019, David Chun walked into courtroom 12 alone. No lawyer, no support team, just a young man about to face the fight of his life against impossible odds. The courtroom was packed. Media, investors, tech executives. Everyone wanted to see the young millionaire's downfall. Marcus Reynolds sat confidently at the plaintiff's table with his team of 5 lawyers, smirking as David took his seat at the defendant's table. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. "Mr. Chun, I see you have no legal representation. Do you wish to postpone this trial?" David stood up, his voice shaking slightly. "Your Honor, I'll represent myself." The courtroom erupted in whispers. It was legal suicide. Marcus's lawyers began their assault immediately, presenting forged document after forged document, fake witness after fake witness. David tried to object, but he didn't know the proper procedures. He was being demolished. For 2 hours, David fought valiantly but futilely. Every objection was overruled. Every piece of evidence was dismissed. Judge Harrison seemed determined to rule against him on every point. By noon, it was over. David had lost everything. Judge Harrison was about to render his final verdict when suddenly, a small voice pierced through the courtroom's silence. "I can defend him." Every head turned. There, standing in the back row, was 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez in her worn-out school uniform, her hand raised high in the air. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Harrison looked annoyed. "Little girl, this is not a place for children. Please leave immediately." But Emma didn't move. Instead, she started walking toward the front of the courtroom with a confidence that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Your Honor," Emma said, her voice clear and strong, "I know this case better than anyone in this room, and I know Mr. Chin is innocent." The judge was about to have her removed when Emma did something that stopped everyone cold. She reached into her small backpack and pulled out a manila folder. "I have evidence that will prove Mr. Chun created Connect Mind entirely on his own, and I have proof that this entire trial is based on fraud." Marcus Reynolds went pale. His lawyers looked confused. David stared in amazement as this tiny girl opened her folder and began speaking with the authority of a seasoned attorney. "Your Honor, may I approach the bench?" The absurdity of the situation was overwhelming, but something in Emma's demeanor made Judge Harrison nod. Emma walked to the front of the courtroom and began laying out documents with surgical precision. "This is the original patent application for Connect Mind, filed by David Chin on March 15th, 2018. Notice the digital timestamp and the unique coding signature." She pointed to specific details that even the expert lawyers had missed. "This document that Mr. Reynolds claims proves his ownership is dated March 20th, 2018, 5 days after Mr. Chen's original filing. But here's the problem." Emma pulled out a magnifying glass from her backpack. "If you look at the metadata of this digital document, you'll see it was actually created on October 10th, 2019, just 5 days ago. This is a forgery." The courtroom erupted. Marcus's lawyer scrambled to object, but Emma wasn't finished. "Furthermore, Your Honor, I have recordings." She pulled out a small digital recorder. "Last night, I recorded a conversation between Mr. Reynolds and another man discussing bribes paid to Mr. Chen's former lawyer and—" She paused dramatically. "To this court?" Judge Harrison's face went white. That's impossible." Emma pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the courtroom. $2 million to Mitchell to abandon his client. Another $1 million to Judge Harrison to rule in our favor. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Marcus Reynolds tried to run but was immediately detained by court security. His lawyers were frantically packing their briefcases, trying to distance themselves from the scandal. But Emma still wasn't done. "Your Honor, I've spent the last 6 months studying this case. I know every patent law, every precedent, every regulation that applies. Mr. Chin didn't just create Connect Mind. He created a revolutionary algorithm that's going to change how people with disabilities communicate." She turned to address the entire courtroom. "David Chen isn't just a millionaire. He's a genius who created technology to help people like my late mother, who lost her ability to speak due to cancer. His app gives a voice to the voiceless." Tears were streaming down faces throughout the courtroom. David Chun was openly weeping, not from relief, but from the realization that this little girl had not only saved his fortune, but had understood the true purpose of his work better than anyone. Emma continued, "The real crime here isn't just a fraud against Mr. Chun. It's the attempt to steal technology that could help millions of disabled people worldwide. This isn't about money. It's about hope." Judge Harrison, his corruption exposed, had no choice but to recuse himself immediately. A new judge was called in, and within hours, the case was dismissed with prejudice. Marcus Reynolds was arrested for fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. But the story doesn't end there. As Emma packed up her evidence, David Chin approached her with tears in his eyes. "How did you know all this? How did you learn so much about law?" Emma smiled sadly. "My mom was studying to be a lawyer before she got sick. She taught me to read legal documents. After she died, I kept studying because I wanted to help people like she did." David knelt down at Emma's eye level. What's your dream, Emma? I want to be a lawyer. I want to help people who can't help themselves. But she looked down at her worn shoes. We can't afford school. We don't even have a home. David Chin made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Emma, you just saved my company, my reputation, and my future. But more than that, you showed me what real courage looks like. I want to make you a promise. He pulled out his phone and made a call right there in courtroom. I'm setting up a full scholarship fund for your education, from elementary school through law school, Harvard, Yale, wherever you want to go. And I'm buying you and your father a house, not as payment, but as a thank you for showing me what justice really means. But Emma's response was what made this story legendary. Mr. Chun, I don't want your money for saving you. I want you to promise me something else. Anything. Promise me you'll use your success to help other people. Promise me Connect Mine will always be available to people who need it, regardless of whether they can pay. David Chun didn't hesitate. I promise. That promise led to the creation of the Chin Foundation, which has since provided free communication technology to over 100,000 disabled individuals worldwide. Emma Rodriguez is now 12 years old, maintains straight A's, and has already been accepted to Harvard's accelerated program for gifted students. But here's what this story is really about. It's not about a rich man being saved by a poor child. It's about recognizing that wisdom doesn't come from age, degrees, or bank accounts. It comes from courage, integrity, and the willingness to stand up for what's right, even when you're the smallest person in the room. Emma Rodriguez proved that day that heroes aren't defined by their size, their wealth, or their power. They're defined by their willingness to speak truth in the face of corruption, to defend the innocent when everyone else walks away, and to believe in justice even when the system is rigged against it. In a world where lawyers abandon their clients for money, where judges sold their verdicts to the highest bidder, where powerful men tried to steal from the innocent, an 8-year-old girl stood up and said, "Not on my watch." The most powerful words spoken in that courtroom weren't from the judge's gavel or the lawyer's arguments. They were from a child who said, "I can defend him." And she did. Today, David Chin credits Emma Rodriguez not just with saving his company, but with teaching him the true meaning of success. It's not about what you accumulate. It's about what you contribute. Emma's father, Miguel, now works as the head of security for Chen's company. They live in a beautiful home, but Emma still studies in the courthouse library after school. Not because she has to, but because she wants to help other people who can't help themselves. The lesson here isn't that children are smarter than adults. It's that sometimes we need to see the world through innocent eyes to remember what really matters. In a system built on compromise, corruption, and complexity, sometimes the clearest voice comes from the purest heart. Emma Rodriguez reminded us that justice isn't about who has the best lawyer or the most money. It's about truth, courage, and the willingness to stand up for what's right, regardless of the consequences. So the next time you feel powerless, remember Emma. Remember that she was homeless. She was just 8 years old, and she was facing one of the most powerful legal teams in America. But she had something they didn't have, the unshakable belief that right is right, wrong is wrong, and someone has to stand up for justice. Even if that someone is just a little girl with a flashlight, a folder full of evidence, and 4 words that changed everything. I can defend him. That's the power of courage. That's the power of truth. That's the power of believing that one person, regardless of age, background, or circumstances, can make a difference. Emma Rodriguez proved that heroes come in all sizes. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. And sometimes, just sometimes, David beats Goliath not with a stone and a sling, but with courage, truth, and 4 simple words. I can defend him. The question is, what will you defend? What truth will you stand up for? What justice will you fight for, even when you're the smallest person in the room? Because somewhere out there, someone needs defending. Someone needs your voice. Someone needs your courage. Just like Emma Rodriguez proved that day in courtroom 12, you don't need a law degree to fight for justice. You don't need money to stand up for truth. You don't need power to make a difference. You just need the courage to stand up and say, I can defend them. And that changes everything.